Hello, everybody. Welcome back to How Come. Today, we are talking about fragrance, scents, and attraction and how they are all interlinked. We are discussing this with Emma Vernon, who is a fragrance expert, perfume lover / advisor, dating expert, and host of the podcast Perfume Room. Today's episode is going to have a ton of fragrance recommendations, so keep your ears perked up for those. Maybe I'll even write a list of them if I am feeling super generous. I love good smells, and the science behind smell and desire or whatever is really, really interesting. So stay tuned for that. And if you have friends who are into scents, or people that you're like, oh, you've never listened to this podcast, but like maybe this episode is for you, send it to your friends. It's like quite PG-13 as far as How Come goes. But as always, still sexy.
How come? How come? How come I can't achieve? How come I can't achieve? I'm rolling up my sleeves. I'm rolling up my sleeves. Oh baby, I believe these guests can help. 'Cause I can't do it by myself. I wanna jizz.
Welcome, Emma.
Hi, Remy. It's been so long.
I know, it's been a minute. I feel like the last time I saw you, we were playing poker with your grandma.
Wait, what? My grandma?
Wasn't it at your grandma's house? Like, didn't your grandma live like 3 blocks from my grandma?
Yes, which was like a fun realization. Wait, and my mom was there? I think I'm scared of my own memory.
It was like your whole family.
Because people like tell me things and I have no recollection. Wait, can you try and jog my memory? Because this sounds very fun and it doesn't exist in my brain right now.
Do you play cards with your family?
Yes, but I wouldn't say we're like a card family, but like we've been known to play.
Well, that night you guys were.
Okay.
And we had dinner and your cat was there and then we played cards and I thought it was like so cute. And then I like went home and I told my grandma about it and she was like, you never play cards with me.
It must have been my mom because my grandmother, whose apartment I lived in, was deceased.
She was dead?
Yeah.
So I never met her.
No. She died in 1998. Been a long time.
Okay.
Yeah.
See, I just assumed if it was her apartment, she was there.
In spirit, in energy, and all of the decor. But physically, she's 100%. No longer on this realm. Emotionally, she lives on. I really have had some memory issues recently that scare me because I have no recollection of this, but it sounds like the funnest
I do
night.
too because I thought she was there and I've never met her.
Listen, I love this for us. This sounds great.
I love it for us too.
I did have another living grandmother who lived on the Upper East Side who only passed away recently.
Okay.
Was she like a little woman, like a little but she wouldn't have been. She wouldn't have been in
that apartment.
No, because she lived like in Yorkville. But I did have a living Manhattan grandmother who you might have, who it's possible. Just to put it out in the world, it could have something could have happened with grandmothers. I do remember Nanny, and I remember just loving her and feeling that like immediate like Jewish grandmother spirit connection.
Well, you know what? Shout out to our grandmothers.
Yes.
This episode will be dedicated to them. Okay, let's get into it. Today we're going to be talking about scents and attraction. Can you tell everybody what you do with scents and how you got into it?
Yes. So I help brands with fragrance development, different consulting things. I also have a podcast. It's called Perfume Room, and I interview a lot of people in the industry.
That's so cool.
So it's just been an interesting pivot. And for some fun background, Remy and I first met through stand-up. And now my life has gone in such a different direction. And now I'm in the fragrance world.
It's so cool. And tell everybody how that like pivot happened.
I really started on like Perfume Talk. And I was one of the early perfume talkers. And now it's such a big niche part of TikTok and has thousands and thousands of content creators. When I started, I was like one of 10. I was like, I was Perfume Talk when it started because there were just so few of us. And I built this whole platform. I ended up really leaning into more like long form content, which is why I'm really more doing my podcast now. But anyway, I started making videos recommending scents to people on TikTok, and people had very obscure niche requests of like, I want to smell like this aspect of this or this aspect of this. And I was like, oh, you're looking for that. And then people just, it's kind of like how I started doing matchmaking too, where just like I was doing a lot of stuff like as like content and free and for shows and things like that. And then people were like, I want to do this privately with you. And I was like, all right.
Yeah.
And then it kind of became a business.
And you just knew so much about scent already, or did you do any like studying?
So both.
Okay.
So it was something I kind of discovered when I started making perfume content on TikTok, is that like I kind of remember smell. Like not everybody can remember a smell, but I realized people were commenting on videos being like, tell me what you think about this scent. And immediately I could place it in my brain, and I could like olfact it. Like it was like the way that you could like see a picture in your brain, I could like smell it in my brain.
Yeah.
And I'd be like, I like this aspect of it, but I don't like this aspect of it. And I realized that I could do that with a lot of perfumes. And so I realized that there was just like years of just being a perfume lover that like went somewhere in my brain that I didn't even realize was like a skill. I just thought everybody was talking about perfume like that. And then
That's unreal.
Yeah. And so then I was like, all right, I'm going to take some courses and like really like make sure that if I'm going to be doing this full time, that I'm actually qualified to do this. So I've gone through like an entire curriculum of olfactive training. Like I've committed all these materials to memory. I've learned about like the history of fragrance and who some of the like the icons are across times, and like different generational trends of like this is what people were wearing in the 70s versus the 80s versus the 90s versus the 2000s and things like that. So
oh my God, cool.
Yeah, I'm by no means a perfumer.
And perfumers are the people who make the scents. So like what is the difference between you and them?
Perfumers have like years. I mean, some people are self-taught, but perfumers typically have like years of education. And I have no chemistry background, and I know raw materials to an extent. So like, for example, a perfumer's palette, they might have 5,000 different odorant molecules that they work with to create perfumes. I have committed to memory a couple hundred of them. So I'm like, I can speak the perfume world, but I am by no means a perfumer. I'm qualified enough to be in the industry and to be like, speaking about it.
Yeah, totally. We're going to learn a lot today. But when you discovered that you had this like special talent with your nose, like had you always been into perfume? Did you know a bunch of perfumes? And like, if so, how?
I've always been really into fragrance. I've always had a big personal collection. It was always the thing that I wanted for my birthday growing up. I always picked my, bath products, shampoos, conditioners, soaps, always by the scent. That was like the sole criteria. And I just...
Because of like just your own preference, or like was your mom or your grandmother like a perfume person?
Well, so deceased grandma, who you allegedly play cards with, she was a big perfume person. She wore a lot of perfumes, and she wore like very maximalist perfumes. So she was wearing like Georgio and like Van Cleef First, a lot of the really loud sort of like animalic or floral scents that were known kind of to like make people choke out in a room.
Nanny always had really strong fragrances too, to the point that my mom, when I was growing up, was like, I couldn't be around Nanny when I was pregnant because I would vomit.
Okay, so my mom had a similar thing with her mother, not the one that lived in Yorkville, the one that passed away, wore all those stuffy perfumes. So my mom kind of rebelled against it. She wasn't wearing fragrance. But because I grew up visiting my grandmother's apartment, and it was kind of like this time capsule, like as I mentioned, my grandmother passed away kind of a long time ago. But my mom just held on to her apartment and kept everything as is, as if she could just walk through the door at any minute.
I love that.
So she had this vanity of all these little miniature perfumes and everything that she wore. So from the time I was like a child, I just remember like dousing myself in all of her fragrances. And it's sort of like what my mom rejected, because my mom would just felt like stifled by it. But then my mom has also said that since her mother passed away, those smells became comforting because they reminded her of her mother. But yeah, similar thing.
That's so sweet. Like it evokes memory, and also like your career working in fragrance now is kind of like an homage to her.
Yes.
And I like kind of feel similar, because like I couldn't have done How Come if Nanny didn't let me live there and like rent it out of her apartment. So again, this episode is dedicated to our grandmothers helping us pursue our dreams.
It's kind of cool too, because I don't know if you had to do this in high school, but maybe you had to write like one of those letters to like future Remy of like, when I'm an adult, when I grow up, I'm going to do this, or I'm going to go to this college, or like, do this thing. And I had written that the things I wanted to be were a comedian, a matchmaker, a perfumer, or a casting director. And so far, I've done 3 of the 4. The casting director didn't really pan out. Maybe that's like the next life for me. But
I wanted to do that too.
And here you are.
No, casting directing.
Which is kind of like matchmaking in a way, of just like, reading a part.
Who's right for the part. Yeah, I wanted to do stand-up too.
But you're doing it, so.
Yeah, so check. So on the podcast, are you talking about like different fragrances all the time?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on who the guest is, but typically every episode has a whole list of fragrances that come up, whether it's from the person who created it or just from a fellow like collector who has like 500 perfumes in their collection and just wants to talk about, what's exciting them.
And do people ever like go to like the counters to go smell them like while listening to the podcast? Like a scratch and sniff, but like...
Well, I try and list all the fragrances mentioned so that people can kind of like go on their own sort of journey. A lot of them can be ordered from like the same retailer too. So like sometimes people will just like add a bunch of samples to their carts after listening to an episode. But I also do community events too. So I do this monthly thing called Smell Club with listeners of the podcast that I've been doing for over 3 years now, where basically I curate a sample pack according to a theme each month in partnership with a retailer called Lucky Scent. For example, this month's theme that's coming up is jasmine. Okay. So I picked 5 different scents. Actually, I typically do 5 scents. This month I did 6, but that kind of showcase the range of the note or whatever the theme is so that people can also like learn about it. But it's really more of like a fun social event where you can actually smell along versus just listening to me talk about all these perfumes. Everybody on the call has them in front of them. We're smelling them. We're talking about them. And I try to impart some aspect of some educational component of it too. But it's mainly just a hangout. So it's fun.
Okay. No, that's cool. And it's interesting that you're doing jasmine because jasmine was on the list of like scents that can be arousing that I was looking into.
Interesting.
And yeah, so I was thinking about this episode because I've always thought scent had a really interesting to do with attraction. And like it does.
Yes.
So this thing I found, it said throughout history, people have used aphrodisiac scents to set the mood. Ancient Indians mention using certain oils and spices in the Kama Sutra, and Egypt's famous Queen Cleopatra is said to have used perfumes to seduce her lovers. People also they're also attracted by pheromones, which we've kind of talked about before with like the white t-shirt experiment. Do you know what that is?
Is that like people wear a shirt, then they get it sent, and you like, there was like a dating app around the like wearing used t-shirts, right?
It was like 8 guys and they sweated in these white t-shirts for like a day, and then they sent the t-shirts to the women. They smelled all of them, and it turned out the ones that they were most attracted to smell-wise, they ended up being attracted to in person as well.
Fascinating.
Yeah. And the reason why pheromones kind of like work is genetic compatibility. So like our bodies release odors that indicate our major histocompatibility complex, which is a group of genes related to our immune system. So people are like kind of sniffing out what genes are different to them because then it would create a more successful offspring, allegedly. So yeah, then there's non-pheromonal smells. And Dr. Hirsch and Dr. Gruss of the Smell and Taste Research Foundation in Chicago investigated the impact of smells on the arousal of men. One study clearly showed a 40% increase in men's blood flow when lavender and pumpkin pie were smelled together.
I've seen that one, yeah.
Right? They tested 30 odors and found direct connection between odors and sex response. They said pink grapefruit. Studies show women who wear the scent of pink grapefruit are perceived to be 6 years younger on average and therefore more attractive to men.
But what's the source?
I don't know. A lot of these studies are like very male-centric too. This source is fragrancex.com.
Okay. They also sell grapefruit scented perfume. So, there might be some.
They said orange is another scent proven to increase blood flow to the sexual organs, testing at 19%. Patchouli, people say stimulates the release of endorphins and increased blood flow. Okay, I don't know how to pronounce this. Ylang?
Ylang, yeah.
Ylang.
Yeah. That's how I say it.
Reduces anxiety and promotes relaxation. Can enhance the romantic experience. Black licorice, allegedly, has been shown to increase arousal in men by 13%. When combined with the scent of donuts, that number jumped to 32%.
Licorice, and this sounds like who's being like,
Crazy.
let me pair licorice and donuts.
Homer Simpson and Willy Wonka having sex.
Like, what? And then also, like, what shows that it was successful? Like, were they measuring like the arousal in like these men's like penises? Were they like
Dicks?
Yeah,
Yeah.
like what was the measurement of like? Were they like, are you turned on? Are you hungry? Like, I don't know.
Right. No, it seems like a lot of it is like blood flow. But the pumpkin pie one is from like a medical journal.
I've seen that. I've seen that study before. Those are the two least aphrodisiac smells you could ever put in front of me.
See, I think pumpkin pie might do it for me.
But would it though?
It would make me feel comfortable, you know? And I think a lot of enjoyment for me personally comes from just like feeling chill and like relaxed. Like a lot of these scents.
I mean, I'm happy to chime in with the research that I know related to like scent and attraction.
Go ahead.
Okay. So I have heard the pumpkin pie and the lavender and the vanilla thing. I think like so much of what you're saying, there's like, if you boil it down to like I think it's so hard to just be like the smell of donuts specifically. I think there's aspects of everything that you talk about. Like you were talking about feeling comfortable. You feel aroused when you're most comfortable. Pumpkin pie is a comforting smell. I feel like pumpkin pie for me is like such a specific like perfume note to be like the arousal note. But I think if we make a more general statement, like I think things that evoke the smell of like baked goods and home and that feeling of like an easy chill, whether it's some sort of like vanilla or something that makes you feel like you're smelling cookies in the oven or like someone in your family's baking. Like I can understand why all of those things are sort of like tender and comforting. And for someone who's turned on by feeling comfortable, that would be like an aphrodisiac. The same way that like citruses, for example, like, yeah, citruses are like energizing. They're kind of more, they're seen as like quote unquote, like kind of more youthful notes in perfumery. So I can understand the, you know, the A to Z of like how certain citrus notes might be like.
You might just like think about oranges at your soccer game.
Right.
Because like scent and nostalgia are very closely linked.
Yeah, like I have a hard time getting on board with the very specific notes that some of these studies show, like licorice and donuts, for example. But I could understand why smells of like gourmand notes or things that like feel comforting would be sensual, like vanilla. There have been studies that like...
Or they could just remind you of your family. Like if pumpkin pie is like, wait, that reminds me of like my uncle coming by, then it's not going to work for you.
And that's what pumpkin pie does remind me of, my Uncle Bob. So I'm not smelling it being like, ooh, let's do it. But, for example, there have been studies shown that certain milk notes in perfume, which just to clear the air for anyone unsure, there's no dairy in perfume. It's like an accord created through chemicals that perfumers create something that smells like frothy and creamy and whatever. But there's been links in... specifically in breast milk, for example. So if you want to talk about like Oedipus complex, mommy issues, all the things, they have found traces of vanillin in breast milk. So scents of like creamy vanilla milky scents might be evoking mommy, which could be hit or miss depending on your own scent associations. There's also a molecule. I don't know if you've heard of the fragrance Molecule 1 from Escentric. It's kind of like has a little cult following. Pretty like universal, like people of all genders like to wear Molecule 1 and it smells amazing on every person I've ever smelled it on. But I did interview the perfumer of that scent who was talking about how it's known to be like an aphrodisiac and that there were studies that like when the main molecule of that perfume, which is a note called E Super, is present, that people tend to be more attracted and aroused. Can I say that that is a pheromone or that it's cause and effect? I feel like it's more causational, but I do think there are certain notes that they found that people tend to respond to more. I also have interviewed a scientist who's studied like the idea of pheromones and scent and attraction. And he basically debunked if human pheromones exist, they have yet to be discovered by modern science. And anyone claiming that they have a pheromone perfume does not actually have any sort of human pheromone because no one in the science community has ever found a human pheromone. There are pheromones in moths, there are pheromones in pigs, there are pheromones in animals. There are things that are attractants that humans are attracted to. You know, like people might like the smell of like their partner's BO, a little bit of filth.
So is what we're calling pheromones just body odor?
Yeah, so more like the
Okay.
technicality of it is not real. So it is real
Okay.
that you might find your partner's armpits to be the sexiest thing in the world, and when you smell it, it turns you on. But it's not a pheromone.
Love my own brand as well.
Exactly. Okay. So it's not you're not attracted to your partner's pheromones because those aren't pheromones. You're just attracted to your partner's body odor. So there's a lot of like like the lingo of so much of like scent and attraction is marketing and not real. But there's truth
so
to it.
Crazy. Because a lot of this, like the thing about smelling out your genes, like they're like, it's an evolutionary thing.
And it might be, but it's not. If they call it the word pheromones, it's not.
Then that's a misnomer.
Exactly. But there could be truth to the fact, like, I mean, I think it makes sense because it would explain, like, if you've ever like hooked up with somebody and like the taste of them just doesn't gel with you, and it's not like they might not have a bad taste or smell or whatever, but it just like you're like, we are just not compatible.
Yeah.
And that's a real thing. I don't think it's because of pheromones,
Totally.
but there's legitimacy to it for sure.
And pheromones, I think, in like the animal sense, are like secretions more, right?
I think it tends to be some sort of like something that they
Like they
excrete,
intentionally.
Yeah, like it's for mating. Like moths have a smell that they emit when they're like,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
when they're trying to.
We don't do that. We're just like, I happen to be sweaty today and you happen to enjoy it.
Yeah, although it is interesting because they have done, I mean, there have been scientific studies where they have been able to like see that different emotions in our bodies yield different smells of sweat. So like anxiety sweat smells different from exercise sweat, for example. So again, like I think the marketing is where people get tripped up because they want to call it a thing that doesn't actually have the label, but there is definitely merit to like, you know, like why your sweat or your body odor in certain places smells different for certain events or moments in your life.
Yeah. And there are just like some very predatory people that can smell anxiety and they're like, that person is a good mark.
Yeah, that's why bad people in this world exist. They're super smellers and they sniff out. Yeah.
What was the thing you were saying kind of gels well with everybody's scent?
Molecule 01 from the brand Escentric Molecules. But basically the main ingredient, the only ingredient in that scent is a note in perfumery called E Super. And there have been studies done that have showed that E Super has like heightened attraction in people. And people have worn, and I know people who have worn that scent who are like, I always get compliments when I wear this. And all of those things are valid. It's just not technically, I wouldn't go so far as to say that it's a pheromone because I think that that's not true.
Yeah.
But I do think there are certain attractive notes in perfume.
I think also it's worth noting that it works with so many people. Not that it's like guaranteed to like get you laid or whatever, but that, I don't know, some scents when combined with certain people are like atrocious.
Absolutely.
And it's not their fault.
No, your skin chemistry totally,
Yeah, it doesn't like take away from the merit of the fragrance itself. It's just like you guys don't gel well. I found this thing on Quora, which I thought was like the funniest post. It was like, as a man, what's the most arousing perfume you've ever smelled on a woman? And he said, Shalimar perfume for me. Real perfumes, not cheap junk, interact with the wearer's body chemistry. Pheromones, he said. I guess he doesn't know what he's talking about.
Exactly.
But he said, take 10 different women and have them each try the same perfume. You will find the main note is the same for all 10 individuals, but the subtle underlying scent will be different for each woman. My late wife Peggy wore Shalimar perfume on occasion. It would literally cause my blood pressure to rise. I would feel my face flush and my heart race. I became putty in her hands when she wore it. It took all I could do not to tear her clothes off.
I appreciate the restraint.
Peggy would use it to great effect against me to get what she wanted. Just to let you know, I willingly went along. After Peggy died, I gave a small bottle of it to a gal I was dating. It smelled horrible on her. She was a smoker, and that might have affected the chemistry. On the flip side of this, patchouli oil perfume can kill me. This guy is like very affected by smells. Whatever is in the compound causes anaphylactic shock. I almost died once when I kissed a friend wearing it. Anyway, guys, when you get your SO of perfume, get real perfume, not toilet water, which is a diluted form of perfume. you won't be sorry.
Okay, I have a thought about that.
Yeah.
So I think so much of the scents that we find attractive are about our scent memories and the people that we associate with them. It's like Pavlovian. Like there is a, like, for example, my boyfriend now has like a big collection of fragrances because we are together. And so he's like, we know when I first met him, he wore one single fragrance and now he has like 40. And but there are a few that stand out to me as like the sexiest ones in his collection. And some of them are just smells that I personally, it's like my taste, I find it sexy. But other ones are ones that I have like really nice scent memories with. And so they're sexy to me because I associate them with like, oh, this is what he wore when we first started dating. This is what we wore when we went on this trip. And so it's the reason I find them sexy is just, it's all personal reasons.
Yeah, like he loved Peggy. He doesn't love Shalimar so much.
Right.
He might like Shalimar.
I guess
but
that's
he,
kind of the antithesis to what
Peggy.
I'm saying, because he, in that case, maybe he would like that smell on anyone. But your skin chemistry also is so important, like you were saying. And so if Shalimar smelled totally different on a different person, it could completely ruin all of his connections to the why he loved that scent and why he loved Peggy and how she made him melt and how he wanted to tear her clothes off.
It's not going to evoke Peggy if it's mixed with cigarettes.
Right, exactly.
And it won't like light up those neurons or whatever. I looked this up. Nostalgia, for those who don't know, is a sentimental longing for the past. It's powerfully triggered by scents due to the direct connection between the olfactory system and emotional and memory centers in the brain. This connection, especially the amygdala and hippocampus, allows scents to transport us back to specific moments and experiences, often evoking strong emotional responses. And there's just like a neural link. It has a direct pathway to the limbic system. And you can, I'll post a picture of the brain, but they're like all very close by. And like you were saying, like you already have these associations with smells. I have an association with cigarettes that I used to love because I made out with a guy who I was obsessed with and he tasted like cigarettes. A lot of people don't like the taste of cigarettes, but then I would make out with other guys who smoked because I wanted to like jog that memory again.
Right, but you weren't obsessed with the smell of cigarettes. You were obsessed with the smell of that person.
Him.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But the cigarettes were coupled with that memory of him. Yeah. I also used to be obsessed with Old Spice deodorant for the same reason, because there was like a tennis coach I had that wore it, and then I would try to get the guys that I was like hooking up with to like wear it as well.
Yeah.
Just like a little role play.
Yeah.
And I'm like, can you be someone else?
Ask me about my backhand.
Not knowing why I'm putting this on your armpits.
Yeah, exactly.
This is funny. It says the same thing as you. Scents are often associated with specific memories or events, like a grandmother's perfume or the smell of baking bread, making them potent triggers for nostalgia.
Preach.
Which I love. I love a little mental trip down memory lane.
Me too. And that's what's so cool about scent, is that it cuts straight to the source and it bypasses like reasoning and emotions, because there have been so many instances where, for example, there's someone in my life where I didn't even know that I knew how they smelled, or I didn't even know that I associated a scent with them. And then all of a sudden I smell it somewhere else and I'm like, that is so-and-so. And that is, I think, the coolest thing.
Yeah.
Like, some people, like, okay, this guy that I used to make out with, you know that he tastes like cigarettes. You're like looking for that. You're aware of it. But I'm sure you've been in the wild and been like, holy shit, that's my freshman college roommate's perfume. You know what? And maybe you haven't thought about it in 16 years or whatever. Like, I just think that it's, that's the power of scent.
I think a signature scent is like really great, because like anytime somebody else is in the wild, they'll be like, oh, that person.
Yeah.
You know,
really
like
nice.
You can really kind of mark your territory when other people are wearing your perfume. Like they're forced to think about you.
Yeah. Do you wear perfume?
I don't.
Interesting.
There were only 2 times in my life that I attempted a signature scent.
Okay.
One was, I think it's Mademoiselle. Is that the Chanel one? So I did that for a little bit. It's flowery and it's kind of like not too strong. So it was okay for me, but I didn't love it. And then I did Lolita for a while. That like beautiful little apple, but named after a baby whore.
I mean,
but she really isn't a whore. If you look into like what Lolita is, it's like a girl who got assaulted.
And so they named a perfume after it because.
Right, of course.
Right. Yeah, naturally.
It smelled good to me. I don't know if it smelled good on me. And so I'm wondering, how do people find their signature scent?
Well, I assume you picked out those two because like did you go to a perfume store and smell a lot of things and like land on those two, or were those just kind of like presented to you and so you wore them? Like did you initially pick them regardless of whether they smelled great on you or not because those are two scents that you enjoy?
Lolita, definitely.
Okay.
I also just like loved the bottle. I thought it was really cute.
It's a cute bottle.
Yeah. And I think Mademoiselle, it was like, this is what girls wear.
I mean, I would like I would try and like parse out what it is that you like about Lolita and then look at things with like similar types of notes. Like Lolita has a cherry note, it has a licorice note, it's a little bit mossy, it's a little bit incensey, it's sweet. So like I would like point you in the direction of other scents that are in that similar genre. Like I'd be looking to send you to scents that similarly feel like fruity, but like a little bit dark. Because that's kind of how I would describe Lolita, and like see and try and like assess what you like about them. So like if I were doing like a consult for you, for example, I might pull out one perfume that's like very cherry because that's one aspect of it. Another perfume that's very incense. Another perfume that's very like anisec, which is like the licorice component. Like I'd pull out different pieces and see which one you like most and be like, oh, okay, so the thing that you like the most about Lolita is this aspect. Then I'd be like, well, then let's smell all these perfumes that also have this aspect and then try and help you like further. Although the thing is though, is that like I found this, if I go into a perfume store and someone is like, unless I'm literally looking for something specific, which is really rare, if someone's like, what kind of perfume do you wear? What notes do you like? Like I actually like surprising myself because I don't find that I only wear something with this one kind of note. It's just like, if the perfume is interesting and good across any like category or genre of fragrance, then like I want to wear it.
So, and you're not beholden to seasons?
No, I mean, there are certain things that like probably, like I generally wear anything I want whenever I want. I probably wouldn't wear something like sticky, sweet, and smoky on like a humid, hot day. Like there are definitely things where I'm like, okay, that would be like a little much. But no, I'm not really like some people are like florals for the spring.
Groundbreaking.
Citrus for the summer, and I'm just like, how do I feel today?
Spice for winter.
Exactly.
Okay, and earlier you were talking about when you were studying fragrance, the icons. Who are the icons? Or like what fragrances are the icons?
Well, we have Shalimar, which Peggy knows.
Shalimar.
Yes. I mean, when I say them, you'd be like, oh yeah, of course. So Shalimar was kind of like an icon because it really kind of introduced that sort of like ambery vanilla kind of smell into fragrance. Chanel No. 5 is another icon because that was one of the first like conceptual abstract perfumes where like if you smell Chanel No. 5, you're not like, oh, this smells like the this in my garden, the this in the here. It has a note called aldehydes.
Its own thing.
Yeah, it's like the first kind of like abstract perfume of just like perfume that's meant to smell like a perfume that smells good. That's not meant to evoke this garden or this room or this, whatever. And as we like moved through time, we had like there were a lot of green fragrances in the 70s. So like 70s was a time where you'd have like a lot of like leafy notes, vegetal notes, sort of like things that evoke the great outdoors, sort of nature kind of
Is
notes.
patchouli in there?
Yeah, patchouli's kind of been like in every decade in its own way. Patchouli was really big in the 90s.
90s,
Definitely
yeah.
a 90s moment for patchouli. But that was kind of more like, so in the 80s kind of had, late 70s, 80s had sort of like animalic kind of floral fragrances, whether they were like maximalist florals, like Georgio or Dior Poison or things like that, or just some of those more like dirty kind of floral smells. And then we moved to like in the 90s, we had some patchouli. Then we moved into kind of these like clean scents, which also is really cultural. There's a lot of cultural context, and it reflects issues with our own history. Like the same way that during, like if you think about the 90s, we were in like the height of, well, not, I guess, the AIDS epidemic really started in like the 80s, but we were still in the peak of like the AIDS epidemic. And so all of a sudden, reflective of that, people stopped wanting to wear dirty perfumes because they associated it with like sex and being dirty and unfortunately AIDS. And it's like it's actually correlated. Like there's like people wanted to smell clean because they wanted to smell clean. And so all of a sudden,
And is that like Calvin Klein and stuff?
exactly, like think of like CK1 or Estee Lauder Pleasures or all of these sort of like dewy, soft, petally, soapy. Exactly. And so there's actually like not a great like the history behind it. Some of it is just like trends evolve, people want new things, but some of it is reflective of like parts of our history that are like, you know, things that we need to unpack. And then like as we moved into like the 2000s, like if you look at like the 2010s, there was such that would be like the like quote unquote like girl boss era. I can do anything that like a guy can do kind of thing. And that's where we started to see like Santal 33 and all of these sort of like, and also that's really when more than like two genders really started entering like public lexicon. And so all of a sudden you start seeing these scents that are unisex or gender neutral or whatever.
Everyone.
Exactly. And you see notes like sandalwood and bergamot and all these notes that feel like not traditionally, you know, like air quotes, like feminine floral
Male or female.
Exactly. And then we moved into like people wanting to feel like individual, and we have like Glossier U and this era of skin scents. Then we entered the pandemic and people wanted to smell comforted, and so they were wearing a lot of like gourmand scents and just like light, soft gourmands at home. Then all of a sudden people could go out again and people wanted to wear these like maximalist smells that could be perceived from a block away, and so Baccarat Rouge became popular. Every single thing has a cultural, some perfumes are just great. But there are usually cultural things that you can pinpoint as to why society is trending one way or another.
That's so fucking cool. And like, yeah, it all very much makes sense. Do you remember any scents that you were attracted to?
Okay, well, the first scent that I ever thought was like so sexy, it was the Ralph Lauren Polo Blue or whatever, like that came out when we were in like, I don't know, middle school or.
And I love it too.
That was the first scent that made me like just like fantasize about like having a boyfriend. A lot of the scents that my boyfriend wears that I like most, there's something that like evokes that for me because it's like, you know, I think of like sixth grade Emma who like no one ever had a crush on, and I think about that fragrance, so it's totally like in the back of my brain. But there are a few scents that like I love smelling on my boyfriend, like a few of them. One of them is called Sicilian Leather from this brand Memo, and it's like this really it's like citrusy, but like a really like sharp, violety leather kind of smell. But it's not like a heavy leather. It's not like horse saddle. It's just like bright, airy, vacation. Like maybe you're like, you walked into like a luxury goods store, like on the Amalfi Coast. Like it's just like, it's just really like nice and fresh. There's a Dias and Durga scent called Bistro Waters. I don't know if it was a limited release or if it's like part of their main collection. But that one I hate on me. It actually like goes like terrible on me. But I love when my boyfriend wears it. It just smells like clean, vegetal, fresh, but like still that kind of like traditional masculine smell. I could go on and on and on. I mean, there's so many scents that I just, he was wearing Bleu de Chanel when we first met. So I always have a soft spot for that scent. And whenever I smell that, it just makes me think of like early dates and dating.
Wait, Chanel has a blue too?
Yeah. Bleu.
That's the one that Ben
is he wearing blue? Okay, well, they have that in common.
And yeah, I'm like, oh my God, you're fancy. Where did you get this taste? But he says that he was inspired by like other boys. Like we were talking about this last night. And I was like, how did like you decide to wear the scents that you like? And he's like, I don't know, like there would be like cool guys in my grade and like they would smell good. And so then I would associate that with like being a cool guy. And like this one guy had Lacoste green. So I went out and I got Lacoste red because I didn't want to be like too copycat, but it also like whatever. So I thought that was cute. And then I think what fucked me up with scents specifically is and you did too. So like, I don't know. We just didn't have the same reaction, but the Axe generation, as well as Abercrombie stores and Hollister, like I would walk into those places and like feel like I was going to pass out, get like an instant headache. People who would wear Axe, I was like, this is disgusting. I also, have you seen that show Overcompensating?
With Benito Skinner? Like, is that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I started the first episode, but I started at like 1 a.m. and then I fell asleep. But I loved the first 15 minutes. but I need to.
It's really good.
Yeah, I need to pick it back up.
So there's a scene in Overcompensating when Adam DeMarco just starts spraying Axe down his pants or whatever. And I'm like, what the fuck? Like his poor girlfriend who's either going to suck or fuck that penis. Like that can't be healthy to put chemicals in your mouth or a vagina.
The only chemical you should be putting is the Jessica Simpson dessert line. Do you remember that?
Oh, yes, I do.
It came out like an edible fragrance. And I remember like my friend at sleepaway camp, my friend had it and I like ate the whipped cream from it. Like we would just like eat her perfume.
So funny.
The dosage makes the potion, and like sometimes like good things get in the wrong hands, because actually Axe, in my opinion, is revolutionary, and it was the stepping stone for so many young guys to get into fragrance when previously they'd been wearing like men's speed stick, and they were like 13 years old, and this was like the first thing that said like, no, you should care about how you smell. Unfortunately, with great power comes great responsibility, and if you give that to a 12-year-old boy, you're often going to be disappointed with what they choose to do with it. And people would like Axe bomb lockers or like do all those like things. So it's like a smell of like trauma, because people did crazy shit with Axe. If someone just put a little bit of Axe when I was like 12 years old, not that it's my favorite smell in the world, but if people had used it responsibly, we probably wouldn't like hate it the way that we do.
No.
But the pudding...
And I'm sure Hollister and Abercrombie smelled fine in small doses.
Yeah. But it's suffocating when you're
pumping. Yeah.
But I did want to smell like Hollister. Like I did buy the like Hollister California perfume. Well, it's like what you were saying. Like you were like how your boyfriend was like influenced by like cool people in his high school. That's like the whole idea of like influencers too. Is like people like a lot of the time, not all the time, but a lot of the times people like see themselves or who they want to be in certain voices. And so if they're wearing it, like, then people are like, oh, this fashion influencer who I think is like the coolest person I've ever seen said that they wear this perfume. So I'm going to wear this perfume because like I want to smell like whatever they're putting out in the world, you know? So I
felt like a lot of people were doing that with Daisy for a while.
With Marc Jacobs. You know, I never got into Daisy, but I get it.
I smelled it. It was fine.
Yeah.
It was really the bottle that was like so beautiful.
Yeah. I mean... makes sense.
But I asked Ben, I was like, why would people spray Axe down their pants? Like, did you do that? Like, that's disgusting. And he was like, it's because it was in the commercials. He's like, they literally would do pit, and like down the pants. Like, it was the sign of being like a sexual man. And I was like, yeah, I guess.
They knew who their consumer was.
A sexual man who's not thinking about their partner. Yeah, literally, like the brain of a teenage boy.
Yeah. Well, that's what's so interesting now. I don't know if you've like seen any of this, but there's like a whole new fragrance consumer, and it is teenage boys, and they are obsessed with the most expensive niche luxury fragrances. It like replaced like sneakers basically. And so like my friends who work in fragrance retail, who like work in the stores where there's like $400 bottles of perfume, they will tell me stories of just like groups of like 12-year-old guys coming and being like, can we see the and like wanting like the top shelf thing, and they're buying it too, which is also just I mean, on the one hand, I think it's like amazing that like it's no like that young guys
it's degendered
now. It's degendered, exactly. That young guys can like confidently be like, I care about how I smell, and they're like getting into this and they want to smell good. On the other hand, like a 12-year-old picking up a habit that involves like collecting $400 fragrances, like good luck to that kid's parents.
But the girls are doing the same thing with like fragrance, and also like their Sephora hauls.
Yeah.
Like the consumerism is off the charts with the kids.
I wore a Juicy tube and blue eyeliner and a Lancome mascara. And then I did have a perfume collection because I always loved perfume. But my makeup was simple when I was like that age.
I still use the Maybelline mascara with the pink bottom and green top.
It's a classic mascara. Why fix something that's not broken?
Why fuck with perfection?
Yeah. I agree.
But yeah, I like that they've entered the space of fragrances, because there's like this thing where whenever women are entering a field or like a space or like education or whatever, like you'll see men leaving the same way that like colleges are now filled with women. Men don't find them as important anymore. Or like even with names, like there used to be a lot of guys named Lindsay, and then it started being associated with girls. And so then like you don't see any male Lindsays anymore because their dads were like, I'm not naming my kid a girl's name.
If you want to be revolutionary and you're listening to this and you're having a baby boy, Lindsay.
Name him Lindsay.
Name him Lindsay.
Yeah. And I just love that it's like the antithesis of that and being like, yeah, this whole industry that has been geared towards women and girls, like, we're not just going to like dip our toes in, like, we're going to make it like a huge interest for us as well.
Well, it's also one of your five senses. Great. So it's so, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
It is so interesting that it has been gendered. The same way that certain scents are deemed masculine or feminine. How can you gender a smell? How can you gender the sense of smell? That is what's, to want to smell good is not a gender specific thing.
Yeah. That's what I used to be like. I think I smell better with male deodorants. But I would feel weird putting them on because I'm like, but they're for boys. But it's like,
but it says who?
But you can smell like pine as well.
It's a tree.
It's a tree.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, all the trees in New York are men. That's why there's such bad pollen.
Wow. Okay. Exclusive. Yeah. Thank you for that. I did not know.
Because they didn't want trees that had fruit, allegedly, because they were like, oh, it'll rot on the ground. But I think it was because they didn't want to feed the homeless.
And that is another podcast episode in itself.
Literally. But speaking of trees in New York, there is a tree or a bush or a flower that I walk by in Central Park. It seems like it comes up maybe just for like a month or two in the spring. And it's called Korean Spice Viburnum. Have you heard of this?
No.
Okay. It is the most delicious smelling flower I have ever encountered in my life. And I've looked up, are there any fragrances that have it? Like, I want it year round. I'll always take like a little sprig and like bring it back to my room and like smell it for weeks. There are no fragrances that have it.
Does it smell? It kind of looks like a white lilac. Does it smell like lilac at all, or is it not that? I'm Googling it right now.
This Reddit person. Someone says it's related to lilac and they can do it with lilac. It's rare.
Okay, here's a
picture. I know at least 2 brands that do.
It's not this flower, is it? Because I saw this the other day and it smelled so good I stopped and for everyone listening, I'm texting Remy a picture of flowers. I just looked at these and assumed that they were white lilacs, but maybe this is what you saw, but maybe it's not. I'm not sure.
No.
Okay. Maybe they are white lilacs.
These are more lilac-y, but it says, so this Reddit says that they smell similar to lilac.
Oh, interesting.
But yeah, someone was like, there's a flower called Korean Spice Viburnum. It has the most intoxicating scent. I've never found it in a fragrance, but I'm thinking about learning the whole art and science of perfumery just so I can put that magic scent in a bottle.
I got to smell this flower.
And someone said, why is this plant seemingly unknown to the perfume world? I can't even find an essential oil. Maybe there's a Korean perfume with it. And another person said, well, the plant is not uncommon even here in New England. Maybe viburnum is one of those florals that can't easily be distilled into fragrance. Still, it's related to lilac and they can do it with lilac. It's rare, but I know at least 2 brands that do. I don't know. Sorry. So is that a thing that there are certain flowers that can't be distilled? And like,
yes.
Why?
Certain flowers are too delicate for distillation, and so it's just like the petals break down and it doesn't work.
Okay.
And so perfumers have 2 ways that they can create these flowers in perfumery. One is just like using accords, and so like oftentimes, so like basically every plant or fruit or whatever that occurs in nature has. If it has an aroma, there's like a molecule that's responsible for it. So there's like all these different parts of like, if you think of it like a pie chart, there's like all these different parts of like molecules that all have smells that they emit that all together make up this smell of this peach or this flower or whatever. So they can extract those individual molecules in a lab and basically reconstitute it in a lab. They can also just like make fantasy accords, just based on like their own like memory and hand or whatever. Or the other way is there's a technology called headspace technology where it's basically like a bell jar that I mean, I'm putting this in like really simple terms because there's so much more like science behind it, but it's like, imagine a bell jar goes over a flower, and that bell jar is like a vacuum that like sucks out the odorant molecules of that smell. And then they bring it back to a lab. They do like this gas chromatography thing. And then they get a report of like all the different odorant molecules and the approximate percentages of like, it's this much eugenol and this much liliol and this much da-da-da that like makes it smell like this. So then they can also do that with a little bit more accuracy too.
Can they do like, I just ordered imitation caviar because I thought that could be interesting to not have to like kill a whole fish and her babies, and it's only $14. Can they do imitation scents?
Yeah.
Like, without taking...
Yes, completely. I mean, if they're doing this, if they're reconstituting it in a lab, it's an imitation. It's not from nature. It's like, oh, they know that these are all the different pieces that make this smell like this, and that's called an accord, and they put all those pieces together in a lab with lab-made molecules, and then no plants or trees or whatever were harmed in the process. So it's more sustainable too.
So if viburnum can't be distilled itself, it could still be recreated.
Correct. And if you'd like, I can post a little thing on like on the Perfume Room Instagram, because a lot of perfumers follow the account, and just ask if anyone's familiar or if anyone knows of any fragrances with it.
I would love that.
Okay.
I think it's my signature scent.
I'm gonna look
because it's something that I would just love to have around me all the time.
Okay. When we hang up this call, I'm gonna post it to my story.
Okay, great.
And we'll see what comes up.
Okay, wait. I have one more thing about signature scent. Is like me just saying like that's a scent I want to have around me all the time. Like that's, you can do room scents. Like what makes something you want to wear versus something that like you just have like a candle of?
It's totally personal. Like there's certain smells that
it's totally personal.
Yeah, there's definitely certain smells that I love to smell in the air, but I just like don't like them on me. And and then there are smells that I'm like, that's like, okay. And actually, if you want a little fun, like inside lore fragrance story, Santal 33, which was like such a popular scent and such a like cult classic scent, originally started as a candle. And yeah, and so basically, if I'm butchering the story a little bit, I apologize, but this is like, apparently the founders of the Labo were just like wearing the candle oil like on their skin or whatever, like they were like testing it. It was never supposed to be a fragrance oil, and people kept stopping them, being like, what are you wearing? I must know. And they got so many compliments on it that they finally went back to the perfumer of the candle, and they were like, you need to make this into like a body fragrance, because even though we imagine this as a home scent, all these people want to smell it on skin. Or like people were, I think, or maybe the story is like, yeah, like people who bought the candle were like putting it on their skin and like getting all these compliments and were requesting it. But it's originally, Santal 26 is the candle. It was not supposed to be a fragrance, but people loved like putting the oil on their skin and were like.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so it just became that. So the answer is whatever you want.
Right, and a scent can, like, it doesn't even have to come from a technical fragrance.
No.
Like if you like squeezing oranges and putting them on your wrists.
You're perfuming yourself. I mean, you're probably going to be sticky, but like more
you're
power
be sticky,
to you. Yeah. I wouldn't recommend doing that, but you want to talk about perfume you can eat, squeeze some oranges on yourself. There you go.
Literally.
Yeah.
Yeah. Instead of spraying Axe down your pants, squeeze an orange down there.
I'm
going to,
a little lime. It's like a little cocktail, you know? Like it's like a little gin and tonic. Just squeeze a lime down your pants.
Emphasis on the cock.
Exactly. Precisely.
I know scents that like you like. Is there any scent, like a room spray or something that you use to like get in the mood?
I mean, I light a lot of candles. Big candle household. I don't know if there's like one specific smell that like
you're just comforted by smell,
by any smell in general smells. Kind of just gets me going. Yeah, but I can't say like one specific candle is the thing.
She's polysmellal.
That's it. Yeah, any smell is just like exciting to me.
I think it makes so much sense because for the longest time during this podcast, people are like, you know, even if like you're romancing yourself or like another person, light a candle, like spray like pillow spray or whatever. And I always was just like, okay, I don't need like dim lights. But it's not about the light from the candle. It's about like the smells and it becoming like a sensational experience. Like you're going to be touching, you're going to be tasting, you smell.
Yeah. It's so personal. I think like the big thing I would say is like there isn't one aphrodisiac scent. It's like, what are your scent associations? What are your scent memories? So much of it is like the people and the places in your life that inform that. So if it's a smell that gets you in the mood, it doesn't really matter if it gets anybody else in the mood because like it's sexy to you.
Yeah. And if you have like an association with Orbit Gum, where it's like you at camp always wanting a boyfriend and then like not hooking up with a social, but like now you have a boyfriend and you can recalibrate that scent with that person.
Totally not personal,
Choose
made
some
up
Orbit
example.
Gum.
Yeah, exactly. What is their commercial like? Dirty mouth, freshen up.
Clean it up.
Clean it up. Yeah. Ding.
Emma, it was so fun having you on. I can't wait to listen to more episodes of your podcast because I feel like there's like a lot to learn. And
Thank you.
I'm going to make a list of all of the fragrances that we've mentioned in this episode so that if you guys want to take a little field trip to like the perfume counters or whatever and like smell what we're talking about, go for it.
Yay.
Where can everybody find you online?
You can follow the podcast at Perfume Room, wherever it's just called Perfume Room, wherever you listen to podcasts. You can just search that. If you want to follow the podcast Instagram, it's just at Perfume Room Pod. There's also a Substack, perfumeroom.substack.com. You can follow my personal Instagram, Emma Vern. And if you want to watch my old TikToks, which are just more of an archive at this point, it's just Emma_Vern.
Great. I have to ask everybody this after a sexual experience, which this has been a bit sexual.
Yeah.
Emma Vernon, did you finish?
Yeah, I'm right now as we're speaking.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you for letting me come.
Of course.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been an absolute blast, and I totally finished.
Love you.
Love
Thank you
you.
for coming. I finished too. And yeah, you guys, if you have any more perfume questions, hit up Emma. And also DM me what your signature scents are. I'm very interested in smelling what the audience smells like. Follow me at Remy Casimir. Follow the podcast at How Come Podcast. You can message either one. And if you want to watch this episode unedited with video, patreon.com/howcome. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time on How Come. Bye.
Bye.
It's not you, it's me. I try so hard to finish honestly. They say you'll know when you go all the way from A right down to O. Oh no, I think that I still got a ways to go. Oh, I'm sick of this and I have got to know. How come? How come? How come I can't achieve? How come I can't achieve? I'm rolling up my sleeves. I'm rolling up my sleeves. Oh baby, I believe these guests can help. 'Cause I can't do it by myself. I wanna just...
Okay, this Marvel section is a two-parter. Part one is with Emma. Here we go. Have you ever heard of that thing where people put their fingers in their vaginas
Dabbing.
and then put it behind their ears?
Yes,
and
absolutely.
wrists?
Yes, I have.
It's called dabbing?
Vabbing. Vaginal dabbing.
Vabbing?
Yeah.
Hilarious. Do you think that works?
I think it's like totally like a placebo thing. Like I think it's like one of those things that like gives you confidence, and then like maybe you're like I can't. There are certain smells that I think like have like a sort of like eau de vagine. Like for example, honey in perfumery. To me, anything with like a honey note gives me that kind of it like evokes. I can give you a list of, and I don't think a lot of people would agree with me on this, but if I think of scents that have that smell, there's two that come to mind. The first one is I think it's discontinued now, but it was a Serge Lutens scent called Miel du Bois, and Weirdly, ironically, I think my mom got like the last bottle of it when we went to Paris. She was like, "I love this," and obviously, I never told. If she's listening to this, I never told her I thought it smelled like a vagina, but I think it smells like a vagina.
So
But she
funny.
loves to wear that scent, so that's what I think it smells like, Mom. And then there's another scent from a brand called Kiko Macheri, and it's called Oliban, and it's like rose and incense and honey. And it smells like a lot of other things, but there is like an essence of dirty underwear that I get from that scent.
Ooh.
Yeah. So patchouli and honey those are like the pissy scents to me. So if you're trying to smell like that, those would be the notes I'd be like, check those out.
Yeah, or you can vab, and the person who approaches you that night already likes how your specific vag smells.
I guess so. I don't know. I'd rather just wear a perfume that smells like that than do that. But I guess we have free will, so.
That's so true. Okay, and then this is part 2, and this is very self-indulgent, but like, I just want this recorded and out there because it's very similar to what we've been talking about, and it's meant a lot to me, apparently, for a really long time. So this is a paper that I think I wrote in 10th grade, and I'm going to read it to you. It's a creative writing project, but I'll only read like the first page. I had a nostalgic trigger moment today. Those are my favorite kind of moments. It's like when you step outside and it's clearly spring in New York, but it smells like Mexico in the morning. Or when you put on some chapstick and you realize it smells like winter. Or but chewing gum tastes like summer camp. Sunscreen and concealer smell like the Dominican Republic, and yellow tiles look like that bathroom you had the pox in when you were 3. That Coldplay song reminds you about that night on the beach and that night you cried about that night on the beach. Fresh cut grass smells like your first kiss on the baseball diamond, which always makes you smile. First base on first base. Sweat and salt smell like that water ski counselor you snuck into the water sport shack with when you were only 14. The hospital smells like that time your dog got hit by a car. Mothballs smell like secrets and scary stories in the attic, even though you knew the room was off limits. Cotton and bittersweet chocolate smell like the dog he got you for Valentine's Day. Snakeskin shoes feel like that scuba diver who insisted on holding your hand in Catalina, even though you were fine on your own. Brown-eyed girl reminds you of the time he turned on the radio, then switched the station after he realized your eyes were blue. Paint smells like the shot glass you bought at the Dodgers game, only to find out that the dye on it would cause permanent damage to your babies, should you have one. You only kissed him because he tasted like cigarettes, and cigarettes remind you of your first love. Shivering reminds you of that time in 8th grade when you almost died of alcohol poisoning, and throwing up reminds you of feeling relieved. And then it's like, today I woke to the smells of biscuits baking and immediately was brought back to Mississippi in my mind. Blah, blah, blah. And then it's like a story about like falling in love that never really happened. But a lot of those things in it really did. Did you pick up on the cigarette thing? He wasn't my first love. He was an old predator that I was in love with. I also thought it was weird that like my teacher didn't write anything about like the water sports shack when you were only 14. Like, hey, is that a problem? But I guess that was the time. It said this establishes a strong voice. That said, maybe they should be interspersed throughout the paper rather than in list form at the beginning. Facts. Anyway, I love nostalgia. So that's evidence.